Welcome to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and today we are on our 12th in-depth character review where we look at an exclusive review of Chirrut Îmwe. And of course, I am right now in Sacramento, California, hanging out at EA Studios where I am currently recording this review. So I really hope you are enjoying this, and I hope you look forward to the over 30 gigabytes of exclusive content that will be heading your way, as well as the content from other YouTubers who are there, such as Mobile Gamer, Warrior from Team Instinct, Reman from Lord Skunk, and Mist Passier. We have a lot of surprises for you, and I hope you enjoy it. But before we go ahead and get into this in-depth review, let's go ahead, pull up the Hall of Fame, and see where we stand so far. In our last in-depth review, we looked at Darth Vader, a highly requested character from you guys, and we placed him in the Knight category. What about Chirrut Îmwe? Is he worth all of your hard ally points or all those Galactic War tokens you can spend for ally points? Well, stay tuned and you will find out. And like how we always do these in-depth reviews, we are going to go ahead and look at the history of Chirrut Îmwe. And at this point, we do not know everything about Chirrut Îmwe. He is still a character we need to learn more about upon the release of Rogue One, but what we currently know is that he was born on the moon called Jedha. Chirrut is a spiritual monk and warrior who was a strong advocate for shutting down the Empire. In the trailers thus far, it is very known that he often fights aside his friend and protector, Baze Malbus, and they both have a very strong bond between each other. One aspect of him that is quite unique is that he is blind, whether from birth, natural causes, or some life experience is still yet to be determined. Even though he is not Force sensitive, he is a strong believer that the Force connects all living things. And despite being blind, he is a very skilled warrior, and he trained himself both physically and mentally to be disciplined with his fighting skills, and his preferred choice of a weapon is his staff, which he uses to conquer his foes. And more is still to be determined upon the release of Rogue One. In Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, we see Chirrut Îmwe carry over his dedication of assisting his allies in times of great despair, and as a result, he fights even harder to turn the tide than his squad's favor. After seeing the brief history that we know of so far of Chirrut Îmwe, let's go ahead and talk about how we unlock this character. And at this point, he is currently only farmable through the new tournament called Streets of Jedha. And this event is very similar to the most recent Shore Trooper event, where it has been confirmed that ally points will be used to refresh your attempts and get up those leaderboards. And as of me, I am definitely going to try my best with my 100,000 ally points to get Chirrut Îmwe because he is quite a treat and a great addition to your inventory. So let's go ahead and talk about the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes, the ketchup and fries of our in-depth reviews, where we look at the stats of a character before mods and abilities are even considered in the equation. And yes, this is the most recent data, including Chirrut Îmwe and Baze, so we have the most up-to-date numbers to understand this game even more. So let's go ahead and talk about the pros, the very first thing you probably want to know, and he has a couple great attributes that are sitting in the pros. The first thing you really need to know is speed. Speed's a very important attribute, probably one of the most important attributes, and we see he is number 12 in speed. The average speed after the two new characters is 126, and Chirrut Îmwe is at a very nice 153, and since he is number 12 in speed, this puts him in the top 15% in the game. Moving on to maximum damage, we find he is number 9. This guy, I'll get to it, but he is a huge damage dealer. The average maximum damage in this game is 5,360, and Chirrut is at 7,645, which puts him in the top 10% of maximum damage dealers. And I've already slightly hinted to this, but this number does not consider his abilities, where he can do more damage for each buffed ally, which is 20% per buffed ally. And we'll talk more on this later. And when you think about mods and abilities, this attack, I'm not even joking, can do nearly, or around actually, 50,000 damage on a critical hit. So long story short, very, very deadly. Moving on to the next category, we see that he is actually king in armor penetration, number 1, numero uno. as of now, and this blows away the original number 1, which used to be 128 from TIE Fighter Pilot. Right now, as of November 18th, 2016, the average armor penetration is 53, and Chirrut Îmwe blows this away at 197. So what that means, even if you have a lot of armor, he is going to get through that as much as possible and put some big damage on you. Last pro I want to mention, as always, if you have health steal, you are getting in the pro section. He has 10% health steal, and of course, this does not actually consider his abilities, which amplify this, so he has a lot of health steal, which addresses one of his other cons that we'll get to soon. But before we can get to the cons, we have to get to the middle of the road, the average of Chirrut Îmwe, and see what's going on here. And we see that he is number 45 in basic damage. The average basic damage in this game as of now is 4,249, and Chirrut Îmwe is at 4,391, so ever so slightly above that maximum basic damage, which puts him in the top 50% in the game. Now moving on to protection, it's a very important attribute of characters nowadays, and we find that he is number 38 in protection, which isn't all too bad, but he is ever so slightly below the average. The average protection in this game is 19,336, and Chirrut Îmwe is 18,650, so definitely a little below, but just enough to keep him in the top 50% in protection in this game here. Now let's get to one more thing, and let's talk about Tenacity, because once we get to the abilities, you really want him to be in the battle as much as possible and not be stunned and not be slowed down, because he offers many great abilities here. And we find for Tenacity, he is actually slightly below the average. The average in this game is 28% Tenacity, and Chirrut Îmwe is actually at 26%, so 2% below that. But of course, as we know, mods can always bump that up ever so slightly, but we'll talk about that in a little bit, because right now, we need to talk about the cons. We heard all this cool stuff. Well, what is he bad at? And here comes the bad thing, but there's a caveat to it, and I'm talking about health, where we see him at number 65 in health. The average health in this game as of now is 19,141. Chirrut Îmwe is about 3,000 below this at 16,074, which puts him in the bottom 35% of health in the game. But as you and I will sit down and talk about in a few moments, this does not consider his abilities, where he has various healing opportunities that can equalize, grant health over time, and it's pretty amazing. But let's talk about one more thing that he is kind of lacking in, and that is armor. Number 83 in armor, to be specific, where the average is 228, we find he is at 186. So that puts him in the bottom 15%. And all that means is that he's going to probably take a bit more damage than characters like Fives, Old Ben, these very tanky armor-based characters. So he could be pretty fragile, and he could be taken out pretty quickly if not protected or healed in the correct manner. So there you have it. Those are all the pros, the averages, and the cons of Chirrut Îmwe, but I'm sure you want to know more about this character, because numbers do not tell the whole story. And pretty much this kit that he has, it just revolves around his ability to keep his team alive as much as possible with his strong healing abilities, and he is able to cleanse his allies to ensure they keep fighting and fighting harder. And all I can say is, do you got heal over time? Because this guy will make sure you got heal over time. And when you're in the right situation, he will deal devastating blows to his foes. And just a quick joke, I always find it funny that if you have a staff in this game, you can do more damage than someone who has a lightsaber, and you will see that in a few moments here. The first ability is called Staff Strike, and pretty much this just deals physical damage, and kind of like General Kenobi in a way, he has a 70% chance to grant a buff to a random ally for 3 turns, and that buff is heal over time. And 3 turns is an extremely long period, not 1 turn, not 2 turns, but 3 turns, and there's more. I'll talk about that in a bit, but this can deal about 3,973 to 4,391, which, as you mentioned, it's nothing to complain about. It's okay. Next ability. This is crazy. It's called As the Force Wills, and all allies have their current health percentages equalized. Very Barriss Offee-like. And then here comes the General Kenobi part. He dispels all debuffs from all of his allies and grants heal over time. Not 1 turn, not 2 turns, not 3 turns, but for 4 turns for each effect dispelled. And then, hey, if you don't have any debuffs on you, then you grant that ally tenacity up for 3 turns. 4 turns, I think that's the longest buff granted in the game. I might be wrong, but most buffs are about 3 turns maximum, 2 or 1. 4 turns is incredibly long. And just the possibility of having 6 or plus health over time per person when fighting squads against squads with Vader, Palpatine, and so forth is quite deadly. So very similar to General Kenobi, and the cooldown isn't too bad. It's at 4 turn cooldown, which that means you could probably use this a couple times in a battle. So very devastating. And I'll put up a screenshot of a battle where I had a lot of health over time just floating around from his basic attack as well as this special ability right here. The next attack that is just, it's crazy. That's all I can say right now. It's called Strength of Purpose. And this is his highest dealing attack, which deals physical damage to a target enemy, and he can deal 20% more damage for each buffed ally. And then if Baze Malbus is present, he can call that guy to assist on that attack. So this, first of all, it taps into a strong relationship that he has with Baze and the potential to get Baze to apply speed down with his basic, which is nice. And it's just a very powerful move. For an attack like this, it's crazy. Before mods and critical damage, this can do about 13,000 to 14,000. With mods, this can do around 50,000 damage. With critical damage and all that, it's insane. It's gonna get you really hard if you can't control Chirrut Îmwe in this battle. And the cooldown isn't all that bad. The cooldown is 3, so not as bad as many other big abilities like Coaling Blade, which should do a lot of damage. 3 turn cooldown for an attack that can do anywhere from 20,000 to 50,000 damage. It's insane, so watch out for that. 2 more things we have to talk about. The next thing is called Indomitable Will, where Chirrut has a 17% counter chance and health steal for each living enemy, and this is doubled for Empire characters. And then hey, if Baze Malbus is present, he also gains these bonuses. This has the potential to give Chirrut Îmwe over 40% health steal when considering his base 10% health steal that he already has and when fighting an Empire character. So very useful for Baze as well, and Baze can kind of act like 5s where he can counter and then go ahead and apply speed down. And it's pretty good. So even though he has very low, not very low, but definitely low health, all these healing abilities, the health over time, it's going to go ahead and try to make sure he's living as long as possible. So he'll be in the battle for quite a while if you cannot control all these health abilities. Lastly, Resolute Endurance. And this pretty much just grants a rebel ally health over time for 2 turns if they are critically hit. And at the start of the turn, if Chirrut is alive, all allies with health over time recover 4% of their max health. So health over time already grants health over time, as the word says. But if you have health over time, you're getting more health. And you don't have to be a rebel for this. This is all allies. So this is very deadly. It's a constant healing. This is probably one of the best healers in the game now that I'm sitting here and thinking about it. It's got Barris, it's got Kenobi attributes, and it's got tons of health over time, kind of like Luminara but on steroids. So this is a great healing ability right here. Now let's go ahead. We got all of these abilities down. Let's talk about the gear requirements. This guy's awesome so far. Is it going to be hard to gear him up? We all know right now that as of the level 85 patch, the maximum gear level is 11. And for raid gear, he is right on average. The average raid gear is 3 pieces needed, and Chirrut Îmwe needs 3 pieces. And those 3 pieces are the Mark V Fusion Furnace, the Mark VI Nubian Tech Design, and the Mark V Droid Collar. Moving on to gold gear, the new gear that has been in the game for just a few short weeks. The average is 200 pieces, and Îmwe needs 220 pieces. So that means he's ever so slightly above that average. So you will need to shop around and get those pieces. Now, the next big guy, purple gear. As we know, purple gear is not the most fun thing to farm. The average is 1,347 pieces, and Chirrut needs 1,390. So he's pretty much right on that average, it seems. And the most popular pieces, he does need a nice big shopping list of purple gear. But he is one of those characters that needs a lot of stun cuffs. So add that to your stun cuff list. He needs 200 Mark III stun cuffs. And the Mark VI hypo syringes are also quite popular for him. He needs about 150 pieces, but the rest are just a bunch of miscellaneous pieces or numbers that don't add up to like 200, 100 like these do. And for blue, green, and white gear, we find that he is just below average on all of these aspects. Now let's go ahead and talk about my random tips, my setup recommendations, my initial thoughts of this character, and then we'll go ahead and put him on our Hall of Fame. And essentially, my initial thoughts when I was playing with him is that he's probably going to be the closest thing to Kenobi for us for the time being, seeing how difficult it is for most guilds to acquire Kenobi shards. And the cleansing opportunity is just huge, and in some aspects, maybe better than General Kenobi. Because, for example, General Kenobi can only grant the positive reciprocal, such as speed down becoming speed up. But, however, if there's ability block on a character, yeah, Kenobi will cleanse it, but there is no positive reciprocal that. However, with Chirrut Îmwe, it's a lot better because he grants heal over time for each debuff applied. And if there was somehow a way to apply 100 ability blocks on a character, he would grant 100 health over time. I'm not kidding. It does not seem to be a limit on how many health over times a character can have. So this is quite probably useful in things like the new AAT raid, where tons and tons of debuffs are applied in the first phase. Well, guess what? Chirrut Îmwe can probably flip that around to make it tons and tons of health over time. Very, very good. And just also like General Kenobi, when all allies are buffed, Chirrut will do even more damage, and when the setup is properly made, he can deal devastating damage. Again, there's plenty of clips in this video where I can do over 50,000 damage, so be careful of this guy. He's not a joke. And although he has synergy with Baze and some rebels, it is not critical or crucial, unlike Wedge and Biggs, for them to be with each other and be in a rebel squad. And perhaps due to the fact that Baze is a pay-to-play Chromium character, this is why they probably did not make them as dependent off of each other, because you might get Chirrut Îmwe from the tournament event, which is free to play for pretty much everyone, but if you don't have Baze, that probably could have caused some uproar in the community, so they probably just lessened the dependency on one another. And also, he is not a character that has to be Rebels, as I said. He will work extremely well with other random lineups because he has a very minimal Rebel synergy, except the fact that when a Rebel is critically hit, he will grant health over time. Other than that, he does not really need to be in there. But when looking at proposed leaders I would recommend he'd be under, I would definitely recommend that he can be under a Wedge or Lando lead, just because of the huge offensive bonuses, the chance to just amplify his critical chance and damage. That's probably the best lead to put him under. But of course, since he does not really require Rebels, he can probably work in many different types of lineups out there. And what about possible counters to him? Because looking at all these health over times, the huge damage he's dealing, it kind of makes it makes me worried a little bit, probably will make a lot of other people worried. And all I'm going to say is that Dispellers, Shocks, Stuns, Buff Immunity are probably going to be your best friend, like the B2 Super Battle Droid, the TIE Fighter Pilot, Emperor Palpatine, Royal Guard, Count Dooku, someone who can just try to stun this guy, because if he's constantly granting heal over time, doing big damage, cleansing, you're not going to be in for a fun trip. And you pretty much just want to keep him out of the battle as much as possible. When he's stunned, kind of like Sunfac, when you stun Sunfac, he is not much of a nuisance for you when controlled. But when uncontrolled, you're gonna feel the wrath of Chirrut, let me tell you. Now let's talk about mod recommendations, and we'll get this Hall of Fame up here. For mod recommendations, there are a couple opportunities here. For if you want the biggest damage, I would just, as most of the time, I recommend critical chance and critical damage mods. But there are some other opportunities here. If you want to use offense mods, I would say that's a pretty good second, getting that damage up a little bit. But critical chance, critical damage are my #1 priority for this character. And also, if you don't have any of those, health is going to be great to make sure his health pool is even bigger, make sure he's healing himself even more. That would be also a great alternative. And when looking at primary and secondary stats, as always, kind of the general rules to make sure you have lots of speed. That's the #1 thing. And then for this particular character, mods that amplifies critical damage or health and protection is pretty much just maximizing his potential to be an extremely deadly character. So there we go. We just went ahead and talked about everything from the history, from the kit, to his gear, to his stats, and we talked about all my recommendations and initial thoughts. So we're going to go ahead and pull up the Hall of Fame. And boy, this is a great character to review. I'm happy I got a chance to have him at 7 stars max gear, and I'm hoping I can get him unlocked this event. So let's go ahead and check out from Grandmaster to Youngling where Chirrut Îmwe is going to stand. And when considering everything we talked about this episode, without a doubt in my mind, this guy is going to be a Grand Master. Giant damage dealer, potentially one of the best cleansers next to someone like General Kenobi, and just all this combined is just a recipe for absolute destruction in this game when using him. So definitely try to get him. I'm going to do as much as I can to get him. When I spent 150,000 ally points on the last Shore Trooper event, I only got to rank 200 something. I'm hoping I can do better with 100,000 ally points, but we will see. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes in depth. I have lots of exclusive content, as I mentioned earlier. To be specific, over 30 gigabytes of exclusive content, ranging from special characters like Shore Trooper, Bistan, the new Chromium character, Baze, Malbus. Lots of characters like that, and I also have gameplay of ships ready. So whenever it comes out, I'll be sure that you guys will get a nice 101 video, as well as videos that show what the end game of ships look like when everything is maxed out at level 85. It's going to be a lot of fun, so stay tuned on my channel for more of this amazing content. Leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. And we will talk again soon, my friends. Peace out.